Good morning.
Good morning. We should have been saying good morning almost 50 minutes ago, but yours truly is foolish and dumb and tired all the time. And last night it was about 10 degrees cooler than it has been for the past week. And it's nice and cloudy and dark out right now. So somehow, while I normally sleep in and wake up naturally at around 7 a.m., it was about 20 after 10 that I woke up today.
Very nice. Very nice. I don't know. Congrats. You got some sleep. That's good, right? If you're
I,
perpetually sleep
yeah.
deprived.
Well, I mean, I napped yesterday too. So
Mm.
the hours on the clock that I was unconscious were greatly expanded yesterday. Um, Somehow being old and out of shape has also caused me to like put one of my lumbars out of place. So
Ooh.
I actually didn't sleep very restfully, even though I should have.
Hmm.
It's like as I was sleeping, it was restful, but then every now and then I'd wake up with a twinge of pain.
That's not fun. I, I I don't know. I also get like weird. We're old. I also get like weird pains and stuff. Pretty often. I didn't sleep at all last night, but the night before I slept, I think 9 straight hours, which was incredible because it's the first time it's happened in a very long time. Ooh.
Look at us, man.
Yeah, right. So I mean, the good thing is, even though I didn't really sleep last night, I can like I'm kind of coasting on 2 nights ago's 9 hours still. So
Yeah, it was like the opposite for me. Uh,
at my
my be,
expense.
well, because it's been so hot,
Hmm.
we've got an air conditioner that's in our office, and our
Hmm.
office is the biggest space in the house. It's like a double room sort of. My wife's got a big computer set up. I used to have a VR set up there, but now because she's doing remote work, she's got two computers in there. And then I've got a
Hmm.
computer in the other side of the room. But because this is where our air conditioner is, like we're working from home, we're not crazy people. We're not going to put the air conditioner in our kitchen.
Hmm.
Um, uh, our kid actually has Japanese style futons as his bed.
Hmm.
Um, so we just pack up his bed and move it out onto the floor of our office, and he's been gleefully sleeping in there all week with the air conditioning,
While
which
you
means
guys suffer.
while we suffer, and more importantly, while I don't get to play video games on my computer.
Boom,
Um,
boom.
so we finally moved him out there because the temperature was low enough that we felt like he didn't need the air conditioner Thursday night.
Hmm.
So because I'd won back some freedom, I stayed up till 2 a.m. playing video games.
Yeah, those are the best nights, aren't they? They
Yeah.
really are. They really are. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I could talk about air conditioning and fill this podcast if I wanted to with fun stories. But should we talk about computer games? I feel like we've queued up this topic and let it float a few times
Yeah,
here. So,
yeah, we've queued it up, and that was my attempt at transitioning into it by talking about playing games on my
on
computer.
the computer, right? All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, it's weird.
Uh,
I think. I mean, I feel like nowadays the lines have blurred quite significantly, but especially when we were kids. Back to this
mhm.
reminiscence type topic, but
Yeah,
uh, they were just I don't know. It was like the style of what a computer game was so different
yeah.
generally
Hmm.
than what a console game was, and it was almost like you had the people that like computer games and the people who like console games, and you could kind of draw a line in the sand and say, okay, you're one of those people or you're one of those people, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was interesting because I think maybe when I was like 4 or 5 or something, I cannot for the life of me remember what the game was. But we went over to one of my parents' friends' houses, and so if I'm 4, this must have been like '88.
Hmm.
I don't know how common it was for people to have PCs back then, but they did, and they had a game that was very much like something you'd play in an arcade game. Like the best thing that I can think of is that it was like a Space Invaders, where you have aliens that are coming down from the top of the screen, but only like one at a time or so, and you are like on either like the moon or a planet or something, and you've got cannons set up, and as the aliens come down, if they like touch the ground, they destroy your planet. And so you have to shoot at them from this gun that's like at an angle. um,
Like it twists around, kind of.
yeah, so like I wish I could remember what that is, that because that's like probably the first game I ever remember playing, but we didn't have a computer that
Oh,
well,
excuse me.
so and I was so young. There's just no way of me remembering. But that was very much like arcade. But when I started getting into computer games, I think around 93 ish, um, our next door neighbor had a game, had a computer, and I got so fascinated with watching her play
Hmm.
games. And she had like King's Quest 3,
King's
uh,
Quest 3. Okay, yeah, yeah.
which is the only King's Quest that I've played that I haven't been able to beat because it's
Got
like
a
on a
time
timer.
limit. that
It was
game that game
it was
taught me what a chamber pot is. I remember playing as a kid, and there's a chamber pot you had to empty at the start of the game, and asking my parents, and they were like, "Well, here's what it is." And I always, every time not that I ever hear people talk about chamber pots, but when it comes up, I think of that game. Awesome
yeah.
story. I know.
Yeah. It was I don't know, there was something that felt like so insanely magical to me about that because I think at that point I had been playing Nintendo games.
Hmm.
Um and I don't know, probably the most complex game I played was like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest or something. Sorry, Dragon Warrior. Um
Hmm.
but and like Dragon Warrior is kind of complex. They give you menus, you press the button and then you walk over the stairs and you can choose stairs, or you can walk in front of a door and you can choose door.
Your threshold for complex is very or was very low. Anyway, yeah, sure, sure, sure.
But seeing like the King's Quest game where it was a text parsing thing and you could type in everything that you needed to do, that to me just like blew my mind.
Yeah. That's interesting. I had, I guess, a somewhat similar, I don't know what the word is, awakening to computer games, if you will. Kind of. But it wasn't with King's Quest, although I did play that series fairly early. I think for me it was the first Civilization game,
Mm.
because everything about that just screamed like computer to me at the time, right? Like, you need a computer. This is not a console game. Like, it was mouse based. It was all complicated. It was very like console games. Things always like scrolled around everywhere, and it was like kind of more fast paced, and there was music, and it was more actiony. This was like a calm, sit down and quietly play and click your mouse and make decisions kind of game, which I think there's not a ton of those on the NES, and certainly like, which is what I was playing at the time. Uh, like Civilization. I think the first one came out in like 1990 ish, like it early anyway. And I don't know, like that game just blew my mind, the first Civilization, because there was nothing like that really in consoles, right?
Yeah.
I mean, now that I'm aware of the entire library of all these different systems, like you can go and you can find, like, I don't know, Romance of the Three Kingdoms or something. It's like a strategic game, and it's more in line with what I'm describing Civilization as. But um, even there was actually a Civilization port for Super Nintendo that came out afterwards. I don't know if
Yeah,
you've played it.
that was actually the first version I played.
That was the first version. Well,
Yeah.
it kind of, it was that version was very. I mean, all those years later, I guess it wasn't probably that many years later, but
It was
even on
91.
for Super Nintendo, are you
Yeah.
sure? Wow,
Yeah.
that came out on Super Nintendo in '91.
Actually no, 91 for PC.
Yeah, okay.
I'm looking up when it
Super Nintendo
came.
was probably, I don't know, '93, four. I guess. Okay, so
94.
okay, well, still, it came out in the same era. 3 years is
Yeah.
a very long time. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you go
yeah.
from whatever 7 years old to 10 years old. Like, the game, like, that's an old game by then. But anyway,
Hmm.
yeah, like, it was so, I don't know. The Super Nintendo version of computer games are always just very different in a weird way, but it just felt very like underpowered, I guess. Like,
Hmm.
that game to me was like, this is what a computer game is, and that was kind of before. Like, I feel like a few years later, shooters were what a computer game is, right? Like, probably
Yeah,
around 94, 5. Like, you didn't really have too many of those type games on a console, but they were everywhere on PC already, right?
it's interesting because I mean, I played SimCity for the first time on Super Nintendo,
Me too. Yep.
Civilization for the first time on Super Nintendo. So
SimAnt. I played
so
SimAnt on Super Nintendo first.
it was interesting because like later on I found out Civilization was on PC,
Hmm.
Civilization 2 or whatever, and it didn't feel like I should be playing it on a PC. It felt like a Super Nintendo game to me
Well, that's
because
funny
that.
because that's my experience with SimCity. Because going from Super Nintendo, so I don't know, the Super Nintendo version of SimCity was like, I don't know, very Nintendo-ized, right? It's kind of like
Hmm.
cute, and there's cute characters, and you have this guiding character, and the manual was super fun to look through, and there's all this cool music. And the computer version was very quiet, I don't know, rigid, everything's gray kind of game. So I
Yeah.
get it. Maybe you had a similar Civilization experience. You played the like prettied up, very musical Super Nintendo version first or something.
Yeah, yeah. I'm trying to find 1991. It's too hard to find screenshots from the original. Yeah, like I'm comparing screenshots of the two right now, and it's like the 94 version that was on Super Nintendo looks prettier. Like you don't have menus across the top of the screen with the word game, orders, advise, all that. Like there's clearly more color in the background sprites and stuff too. Like I don't know.
I don't disagree. I think something about, I mean, like, especially on the older systems, like the look they had was very characteristic, right? Like a Super Nintendo
Hmm.
game had that color palette. It had that, I don't know, that style to it. Like, if you like that style, like I just loved how the Super Nintendo SimCity looked and played. I just could not go back to the PC version. So I totally get it.
There was something interesting to me where games like that are sprite based, I felt like they belonged on a console.
Mm-hmm. Which,
Whereas like
yeah.
the stuff that I was like very interested in, and it's totally just like what you're introduced to first, I guess. Like when you look
Mm-hmm.
at the sprites and they've got more colors and stuff on a console, you're like, well, why are the computer doing that? Whereas where I was looking at my neighbor playing King's Quest and Space Quest and Quest for Glory, like those were vector based
Mm-hmm.
things initially, right? And so those screamed computer to me. Like if I saw something that was trying to replicate that look on a console, I would have just been like, "What the?" And I don't think there was anything reproducing that
Yeah.
almost until like Star Fox or something.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you kind of just had this situation where the computer was the more powerful system, and I guess that was that kind of came out of that. I don't know. For me, I guess like another thing I always felt was like, and it was real. Like it wasn't just me imagining it. I think anyway. But like obviously, when you wanted to release a game on Nintendo, you had to go through the Nintendo approval process
Hmm.
and like get their seal of quality and stuff. And so you didn't have like, I don't know, adult games or like, I guess like the shittiest imaginable quality of game. It seems like a lot kind of made it onto the console, but generally like things weren't like broken beyond belief. You know what I mean? Like that approval
Yeah,
process made for a curated set of games, obviously. Whereas like on PC at the time, anyone could just dump a game out, and so you had a lot of. I certainly had a lot of um, like I want to say adult game. I mean like not like sex stuff, but like I had like a game called Barbarian, and you were just, it was almost like just a one-on-one fighting game where you had to like cut the other guy's head off, and if you successfully cut his head off, there'd be like blood everywhere. You know, I mean, totally ridiculous. But as a, I don't know, whatever, 7 year old, it was like, yeah, right? And like you're not gonna get that on Nintendo, right? Like that's it's cute, cuddly characters kind of image at the time, right?
yeah.
Um, and even kind of now, I guess. But like I think I mentioned last episode or a few ago, I had a Atari ST computer,
Hmm.
which was a fantastically cool gaming machine, but it just had a lot of these really like, I don't know, like adult games, like just bloody games, or like, not like, I don't know, like Leisure Suit Larry kind of like
Yeah,
sex
yeah,
joke, silliness stuff, right? That kind of thing.
yeah. Leisure Suit Larry 3, I think, is on my to do list for this year.
Did you beat one and two then?
Yeah, I beat 1 and 2 a long time ago. I there was like a collection of them on sale at GOG.com a few years back, so I
Mm-hmm.
bought like all of the Quest for Glory, all of the King's Quest, all of the Space Quest, Police Quest, and Leisure Suit Larry is like, I think I got all of them for like a total of like $15 or something.
Yeah, yeah.
so,
That's funny.
so that's less than $1 a game, and I was just like, yeah, I gotta buy these.
Yeah,
Um,
I only played the first one.
um, I think I played one. Let me double check actually. Video games. I like how if I can just type video games, Google knows that I've visited my spreadsheet enough times that it will take me to that.
That's your
Uh,
go-to.
yeah. So Leisure Suit Larry, 1, 2, and 5 I've played so far.
Played
Uh,
through, like finished.
yeah, start to finish, and they're kind of satisfying because they're. I have a real soft spot for those old text parsing games
Yeah, I've
because
noticed. Yeah.
they feel so open in being able
Hmm.
to do stuff, and oh, I'm distracted for a second because I guess number 5 wasn't text parsing. That was the icon based stuff. Maybe that's why I chose that, is because they had switched to icon and I wanted to see how it compared.
Mm.
Um, but Leisure Suit Larry 2, I think, is one of the few text parsing games I've played where I never needed outside assistance.
Wow. So in other words, I assume that's a compliment to the game.
Yeah, it was just at the right balance where
Hmm.
you could figure out all the puzzles on their own. I feel like that was part of their strategy way back then. Is like they with Space Quest 1, for example, you evacuate your spaceship that's been blown up,
Hmm.
and you crash on a planet in a escape pod, and then you have to cross the desert to kind of figure out where to go.
Hmm.
And if you didn't think to like search under your chair in your escape pod and retrieve some water, then you end up like an hour later you dehydrate and you die.
Wonderful.
And it's like enough time passes that like you could have visited a lot of areas, so you have no idea exactly what you've missed. It's like some of these puzzles used to be just like they made sense if you knew the solution. They made sense, but there was
Although that's like designed for maximum irritation by the sounds of
yeah.
it.
So I mean, those were like the games where you learned, save frequently, but don't save
Hmm.
over your files. Save
Yep.
like multiple files.
Yeah, I mean that was even in like the civilization days. Now as an adult, I kind of like to just throw it in the wind and take those chances and not have the ability to go back. But as a kid,
Yeah,
like my civilization save file was was like a sequence of 300 of them for every year or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the Quest for Glory games, those are like my favorite games ever. Um, but I
Wow.
needed a hint book. I needed a next door neighbor to help me figure out the first one. And to be fair, I was like 8 at the time, maybe, so
Hmm.
maybe that'd be different. But the second one, like I needed their official hint book in order to get through it. And
Yeah.
they sold those, so of course they're making the games just obscure enough to that people need to buy those.
Yeah.
Um,
Just obscure enough and just engaging enough that they don't they stay in that middle area, right?
yeah, like I I I loved the fantasy of Quest for Glory 2, like being able to talk to people and ask them questions, and you could ask them about stuff that's not relevant to the story and get little jokes and stuff out of it, and you could always try these things. But that one was another game that was on a timer basically,
Ooh.
and so if you didn't think to find like the magic lamp and the stuff that goes along with that, or the bellows in order to capture the wind elemental on the day that it destroys the everything and it's game over.
Yeah.
Like it's it, I don't know how you would figure out those puzzles necessarily. It's like the thing appears and then I think you have like 2 days to defeat it,
Hmm.
and doing like whatever research it would take to figure out how to beat it. I don't even necessarily know how you would go about doing that.
I think that's where you start saving your game in different slots each time.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
because that's the sort of thing where like once you defeat it, or once you've lost to it, you have no choice but to go back several days and try to figure out what
What you
is the
missed.
weakness to this thing that you had no way of knowing was coming.
Yeah. I also have a soft spot in my heart for these kind of games, but oh, like a game does that kind of thing to me once, and I put it down for the rest of my life. Honestly,
Hmm.
like it just I hate the like you missed this thing X hours ago.
Yeah,
That's it. You're done.
yeah. I don't have much patience for that in modern games, but when I was a kid and I only had access to a couple of games, it was like I it didn't aggravate me, and I kept at it. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess it did because I somehow got the hint book.
Yeah, well, I mean, different era too. Like, you'd buy the one game and have the one game, and it would be the weekend, and that's what you'd
Yeah,
have to play. And so, like, what are you going to do, right? Like, you can't as easily just trivially, I don't know, return it on Steam and go do something else or whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, like I love those games. I think I do enjoy both. I do enjoy kind of the open ended type everything game, and I do enjoy the like what you described, like Leisure Suit Larry 5 as kind of the more guided clicking game when it's done well. Both I think both have to be done well to be
Hmm.
like really engaging, of course. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I can't. I'm like sitting here trying to think if I've finished one. Like I believe I've beaten King's Quest 5, which was clicking. It wasn't.
Hmm.
I think that was a clicking game, right? You did
Yeah.
you beat those ones? Yeah, I think that was. I think 1 through 4 were text, and 5 was the first clicking one. Is that right?
Um, I don't 100% know. I when I played 5, I played that on Super Nintendo, I think. So that was definitely clicking, but I don't know if it was different on
Pressing.
PC.
Pretty sure it was clicking. I think if I might be
Four,
imagining
5, and 6 all used icons.
four as well. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember five was like a big hit, and I don't know what it was that was like particularly incredible about it, such that it was a hit compared to like four or three or something. Maybe it was just prettier. I thought maybe it was the icon thing.
Mm.
So I'm kind of surprised to be reminded that four was like that too. Four. You used the princess or something. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which that's also on my to do list this year.
yeah.
Princess Rosella. Um, yeah. Actually, it's hard to tell. I'm just like quickly trying to find this. Number 4, I don't think was icon actually.
I thought it was text. I thought five was
Yeah.
this like introduced this icon interface and did it really well, and it was like this big hit. And then you kind of saw all these other games come in that used the same interface. That's how I've remembered it. Like
Yeah.
that was the big like that was their big innovation or something.
Oh no. I'm just looking through the reviews here, and it says King's Quest IV picks up directly after the third one, even interlacing their respective end and intro sequences. So now I feel like I can't give up on 3. I have to go back and finish that one.
Just uh, watch a let's play or something.
Maybe. Yeah, 3 was so. Like I said, that my next door neighbor played that, and that was kind of what hooked me
Mm,
on PC gaming was seeing this and being able to type stuff, and I tried that maybe 3 years ago,
mm,
and you have to like fulfill a whole bunch of stuff before this wizard who's your master, you're his slave. If you don't do all this stuff at the right time, when he comes back from his outing, he kills you.
hmm.
And it's just like I,
Yeah, no
I
fun.
I hate having to just like use a walkthrough step by step in order to get through a game, but I feel like I can't figure that one out.
Hmm. What is the time limit? Like, what does it cover? Like, is it the whole game? Like, you have to beat the whole game in X time?
King's Quest 3 time limit. I don't know. And they don't actually show you the timer, I don't think. If you haven't defeated him by 4:30, I don't know. Let me search for that. Control F 4:30. Uh, I'm just reading
Mhm.
that this guy kills you if you don't feed him. This also applies to de facto time limit to the game. If you haven't defeated the wizard by 4:30, you always die because there are no more meals in the game for him to eat. In actuality, to have any hope of winning, you must defeat him by 3:30. Um, so,
So they do waste an hour of your
but
life.
um,
Excuse me.
so I don't know what that means though in the context of this. Like,
Mm.
I don't know if he's like the final thing in the game, or if there's more to do after you beat him. Um, I'll look into that more deeply when I'm not on the podcast clock.
Right. I have a little intruder, so hopefully he's not going to make noise. But with him, there's probably no hope. Um, yeah. Do you? So I was always a big Star Trek fan, and I played.
25th anniversary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if you've played that. I
Yeah,
just thought, yeah, that was so well done to me. Maybe partially it was probably because like I was a fan and whatever, and they used all the real voices and they got a
yeah.
lot of things kind of right. But even like the stages, I don't know. I really enjoyed that game. I thought it was put together really well, and there was like it was episodic, right? So you could take
Mhm.
say King's Quest Five, but it wasn't like a big sprawling adventure. It was like broken up into seven parts, and I actually liked that a lot because I don't know. It just felt like it was like if say King's Quest Five was like five little games instead of one big one, right? And
Mhm.
one of those stages had a time limit, as I remember. The third stage, you're on like a space station, and there's like some gas.
Yep, that's the one that I never made it past.
You're majorly anti time limit. I did make it past, and I agree. I'm not like a huge fan of time limits, but like if there's a little sequence in the game where you have to do it, it's like Metroid where you're running away from the explosion or something, right? Or like the exploding base, you have to get out in time or whatever, like 5 minutes. Okay, right? Like I really don't mind that
Yeah.
little sequences, and so having one episode with a time limit wasn't terrible. I thought. Also, it was like within the within the time limit, you had to like I don't know. There's only like three or four things you had to do. You know what I mean? It wasn't like a sequence of 40 things, and you're like rushing and rushing. So
Yeah.
You just had to figure out what those things were. Or I think there was like some chemical combination you had to get right with like these canisters. I don't know. Great game though. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. To prepare for this discussion, I made a list of like my favorite PC games I enjoyed playing growing up. Earlier than 2000, I think that was our decision, our
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
arbitrary time, and that was obviously early 90s. I don't know. I really like that game. That was a. I thought they did a good job of taking a licensed property and
Yeah.
making interesting stuff happen, and then using that icon click interface. What year
Yeah.
was King's Quest Five? I assume they got it from
Uh,
them.
Let me see. King's Quest 5 was 1990.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So then this was the following year.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember at one point, my mom actually bought us the Interplay 10-year anthology classic collection. So that came with a bunch of games from Interplay, which was like, I remember trying The Bard's Tale and hating it, and The Lord of the Rings and hating it,
Lord of the
and
Rings was there a game?
yeah, J.R.R. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings Volume 1.
That's funny.
That was actually my first introduction to that world. I'd never read The Hobbit or anything,
Uh-huh.
and that game was uh,
Put
not
you
it.
off. Yeah,
But the 25th anniversary Star Trek was part of that, and then Out of This World. So those two games
yeah,
I
yeah,
remember playing.
yeah. Out of This World was fun.
Yeah, it was too hard for me. That's
It's too hard for me too, but
believe it
they
or
look
not,
cool.
that one's also on my list to play this year.
Well, you're going back. You're circling back to the good old days, I guess.
Yeah, I've got the oldest games that I have on there for this year are Leisure Suit Larry 3, Another World. Oh, why did I write down Another World instead of Out of This World?
That's
Um,
both names I think apply. Isn't one the European name or something? That might be
Another
one.
World, Out of This World. Yeah, so it was Out of This World in North America.
And
Okay,
another world in other places.
yeah, okay. So yeah, same game. And then the King's Quest one, or sorry, King's Quest 4.
Yeah, right on. Right on, right on.
What's something else on your list there?
Let me look. Okay, there's another game I wanted to bring up, and it's not that it was like I don't. There's nothing particularly like PC-ish about it. But have you ever
Mhm.
played Biomenace?
No, I don't
I
think
thought that was the
so.
coolest game. So it's a platformer, like it's a computer-based platformer. It looked kind of cartoony, like Commander Keen palette,
Right.
like EGA looking stuff. But I thought it was really cool because you're this guy with a machine gun, and you had to mow down aliens. Nothing too unique, but it didn't show the bullets on the screen. Like it was like a real gun, right? You just point the gun
Right.
at stuff, and you press the button, and then they explode into like blood or whatever. And you're like, it felt like real. Like I never felt so empowered in a game. Like I'm not even really into like blood and
Yeah,
guts,
yeah,
violent
yeah.
games, but like at the time anyway, like instead of like a little pew bullet across the screen, like you just hold a button and you mow down whatever's at the other side of the screen. That was like the coolest thing ever to me. So
Huh.
very I don't know, in that sense, like at the time I don't there was really no other game I was aware of that did that, and it felt great. Like it didn't feel weird. Like I didn't feel like I needed that little visual bullet moving across the screen.
Yeah.
And the game overall was just really fun. It was just uh, like if you think of Mario games, they're just these long, like left to right stretches you have to make it through, right?
Yeah.
Whereas this, it was like there was cities with these crazy buildings you had to kind of go up, and it was all like
Yeah.
one
I'm seeing lots of
level.
ladders.
Yeah, like you go up and through the stage, and then you go through the city, and like it was very like what I was saying earlier about being like adult, like there's dead bodies everywhere. Like it was just really like for me to play that game was like whoa, I'd never get this on Nintendo. Um, yeah, I don't know. Even now, I kind of like it was a big thing to me then, so I would play it again. I had this like shareware was a thing back then, right? And I
Yeah.
bought this this CD like when CD-ROMs were still super novel in home PCs. I bought this disc of like 1,000 shareware titles. And they were
Mm.
basically just demos for real games you would play, right? But of course, I just obsessed over this and played through all these games on it. I'm pretty sure Biomenace was on there. And that's how I knew about it, and so I bought the full game and played it. But there's a lot of other stuff on there that was a lot of fun. So that definitely that's kind of my PC like the games off of that disc were a lot of things I played back in the
Nice.
day. Another one, uh, I talk about this a lot. It's definitely not your kind of game, but ZZT. I thought ZZT was the coolest thing ever at the time. Again,
I know
um,
ZZ Top.
ZZT. It was what launched Epic Mega Games by Tim Sweeney. Tim Sweeney's
Okay.
ZZT. It was I forget if it was his first game or his first big hit or what, but like what we now know is Epic Games with Unreal Engine and everything.
Yeah.
all went back to this ZZT game, which was entirely ASCII based, kind of overhead adventure where you move the smiley face ASCII character around.
Yeah.
And what made it special was it was kind of like what you're saying, like with the text adventure games, like you could. So in the actual game, you're like moving around and shooting bullets and doing things. And there's a lot of cool puzzles and stuff. Like for what it was well designed. Like the world design and stuff was well done. But like you could interact with people and talk to them and do stuff.
Yeah.
And it had a world builder, and so you could build your own game with all the same tools, and so you could program the characters. So it was really neat. Like you could put an enemy there, and then you could write a script essentially. Like at the time, I didn't like it was just that was my kind of introduction to programming, and so you could program this character to do certain things, and it was really really neat. Like you would interact with them in a certain way, and so that was kind of my introduction to making games. And so like I had a community of like my neighbors played it and another kid at school played it. Like I knew people who played it, so we would make levels and like share them with each other. Like it was just a blast at the time. That was a big one for me.
Well, I'm kind of fascinated because as you're talking about it, I'm looking it up and I was trying to see if there's any way that I could get a hold of it. So I searched zztgog.com because that's the most obvious place for me to look. And so on their forums, under the Quest for Glory series, someone starts talking about it, and apparently there were fan games for Quest for Glory made in the style of ZZT.
There's a website somewhere called ZZT Vault or something, and it's just hundreds and hundreds of games that people have made. And of course, a lot of them it's like some people
Yeah,
make like Star Wars games and this and that. And what was really neat is like you were quite constrained in the kind of game you could make, right? Like if you just load a video of ZZT in YouTube or something, you'll kind of see it's just this overhead, like it's almost like Dwarf Fortress. It looks like Dwarf Fortress, but on like
yeah,
your alone adventure kind of thing. Except people would like kind of break it and make new games out of it. Like I remember someone made a platformer basically, and what they did was like they made an invisible. I'm trying to remember. They made an invisible character, and they programmed him so that anytime you pressed some button, that character would move up and then back down, and it would push your character up and back down so that it looked like you were jumping. And then they
right,
programmed a bunch of other invisible characters to like push everything on the screen. Like you couldn't like you made characters like literal things on the screen that did stuff, and that's what you programmed. So people would make them invisible and then program them to do certain things so that it was as if they were like changing the game mechanic itself. Like they'd have those invisible characters push things around so it looked like things were moving, and just like the ingenuity, I guess, at the time was also very interesting. It was just, I don't know, it was just a lot of fun.
nice,
Great intro to programming and making games to like a very young person
nice,
in a very primitive way. So that was a lot of fun. That was definitely a big one for me.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
for me it was interesting in that era. Like there were some of those shareware games that I played. I think that's how I originally played Wolfenstein.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then there was another adventure game called Hugo.
Hugo's
Uh,
House of Horrors.
yeah, yeah,
Hugo. There were three of them. There's the one he's on the island. What was
yeah.
the
The I
first one?
um, it was actually only the second one I think I played, the one on the island.
There was definitely three. I think House
Yep.
of Horrors was the first one. The island was the second one.
Uh,
That
list.
game's
Oh,
red.
there was a lot of Hugo games
Oh,
apparently.
were there?
Like
Commander Keen.
I'm looking at Hugo Winter Games, Hugo Saves Christmas, Hugo the Magic Oak, Skylar's Revenge, Hugo in the Hut, like there's there's a lot.
Wow.
Um,
I was aware of three, and I thought Horrors was first and the island was second.
yeah.
Am I?
Okay, so uh there's the classic Hugo series. Oh man.
Hugo 2, Who Done It? Hugo 3, Jungle of Doom. Okay. So Hugo 2 was Who Done It? And I guess it's a mystery kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's vaguely familiar.
Yeah, Wikipedia is not helpful. I didn't realize there were that many titles. The Hugo trilogy, there you go. Yeah, so I had the Jungle of
The
Doom
jungle one.
one, and that was just like the Sierra games, like so
Yep.
that was very much my era. And then yeah, we had a friend who gave us I think Doom 2
Yeah.
and Heretic,
Heretic. Yeah. I was gonna
and
say it before you did.
I mean those I was more interested in Heretic than Doom. Like I'm more interested in like
Thematically interested you.
fantasy thematic
Mm-hmm.
stuff as opposed to science fiction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, but
What
I don't
about?
know. What were you going to say?
I cut myself off because I was gonna say what about Descent, but it's sci-fi
Oh,
too. But if you
no,
played
I never
Descent,
tried that one.
oh man, Descent was awesome at the time because it was like what would you call it? Like it was actually 3D. Like you could like look up in the air because you're a spaceship, so you change your
Right.
orientation so you're pointing straight up, and then you fly straight up. Like whereas like Doom, I mean, even the way it was implemented, it was like whatever. It wasn't really
Right.
3D.
Right.
And so like you're just turning in a 360-degree circle or whatever.
Yeah.
And so Descent was another one of those games that was like, whoa. Actually, the last PAX I went to, I forget if it was the original creator of Descent or just some guy, I don't know, but somebody had made basically like a Descent for the new generation kind of thing.
Huh.
Of course, there's a lot of those happening in the indie space, I notice, or they get attention anyway. But I don't know. It's nice to see some Descent love, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. No, I was just gonna say, like for me, for whatever reason, the shooting games didn't really appeal to me.
I was
Um,
never a shooter person either.
so I was kind of sticking with those things, and I remember at one point the Quest for Glory anthology came out that had all of them, and I was just like, oh man, I've never played 3, 4, or 5, and I've just been dreaming of these, and I got to get them. And I number 3,
No,
um,
no good.
I'm trying to remember. I feel like I didn't really get anywhere in number 3, but I was like, no, I think my neighbor had number 3, so I knew a little bit about that. But I was
Mm,
so excited to try one that I had never played before that I jumped straight into 4.
okay.
And you start off in a cave, and as soon as you exit the cave, there was a game breaking crash. Um, and I just couldn't figure out my way around it. I was constantly dying, and I guess there was something where like my clock speed on my computer was too fast for it or something, and
Okay.
so it's just there was no hope of ever playing it on my computer.
Brutal.
Uh, and I'm pretty sure that this was still before I had the internet, so like I had no idea how to look any of this up. I had to take it back, and my mom was uh, the computer store let us return it because it was like the same day, and they were the ones that sold us the computer, and they had kind of a good relationship with us, but they told us like we don't do exchanges on software, like this is the only time we're ever going to let you do this. And
Mm.
so my mom didn't buy another computer game again.
Oh wow.
and
Brutal.
and so like that was kind of it for me pre 2000s. Like I just never
Wow. Brutal.
yeah.
Brutal. Brutal.
And I kind of had that attitude for a long time too. Like it wasn't until 2006 ish or so that I got back into playing computer games after I like almost graduated college, because I had this attitude of like what you were mentioning earlier with the like Nintendo quality seal of
Mhm,
approval or
mhm,
whatever.
mhm.
I felt like when you buy a console game, the game is targeted and it's going to work on that system. And when you buy a
Yeah.
PC game, there's going to be so many possible incompatibilities that you're just like playing roulette. And so I was really soured towards PC games for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of went. Yeah, I kind of went through the same thing. I remember going back to Star Trek, the Star Trek 25th anniversary. My
Hmm.
God, I don't know what your experience was, but me getting that damn game to work, like you had to
Hmm.
configure the EMS memory and map it in a certain way,
Yeah.
and then like depending on your what was it, auto exec and config syst files, like they would boot certain things, and you had to change that and make a special one just for this game, so it didn't load
Hmm.
other things into memory. And then in a modern system, like the game wanted, like when we got a newer computer, and I thought finally the game's going to work again, and like it was configured to look for the memory configuration of like an older
Yeah.
OS, and so it wouldn't even work on the newer OS that would have the kind of the leeway to play it. Like, oh man, just trying to get that game to work was hell. You can
Yeah.
make it work on DOSBox pretty easy nowadays, of course, but at the
Yeah.
time, that was crazy. And then I remember when my dad, um, he, he went on like a business trip to like Malaysia or something, and they had a shop selling pirated computer games. So he bought me
Hmm.
some. It was like, look, these games only cost $1 each, and it was like the first Tomb Raider,
Hmm.
and I think also Command and Conquer. And anyway, our computer was too old at the time, and I think we didn't have like a good video card or whatever. And Tomb Raider, without exaggeration, was probably like 0.5 frames a second, but it would load and I could see it and I could hold the controller, and it was obviously reading the input and doing the right thing, kind of. But literally, the screen would update every 2 seconds, so it was unplayable. But like
But still exciting.
it's being dangled in front of me, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a lot of sourness about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I feel
Uh,
like there's a lot of computer games that were like super popular that I didn't really play, like Monkey Island rather. I don't know. Did you play that or like
No.
Thief? Was that 2000 or before 2000?
So I did try Thief, the
Mm-hmm.
original one, but I actually only tried that like maybe 6 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't hold up particularly well in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It was like supposedly groundbreaking at the time, like for the stealth genre,
Mm-hmm.
and I can kind of see why, but it's just uh, by today's standards, it doesn't hold up. I found the same when I tried going back to playing Ultima One. It's like if you look at certain games at the time that they came out, they were like full of ingenuity,
Mm-hmm.
and I can definitely see how they inspired everything else. But they're so rough around the edges that when you've played much smoother experiences, it's really hard to go back to them.
Yeah, yeah, I get that. I agree. I mean, I think part of it too, like nostalgia drives a lot, right? Like if you grew up with those games, you probably
Hmm.
have a huge tolerance to go back. It's like for our generation, I feel like NES era, like it's harder to
Hmm.
go. It's hard to go farther back. Like Atari, I get bored in 10 seconds, but NES I could play for hours and hours and hours. And it's like the first system to me anyway that's like really get replayability. And
Hmm.
I can try and objectively justify the statement, right? Like it's the first one that like you could make out what's going on and you could save your games and I don't know whatever, right? Compared to say Atari, first home
Hmm.
system, maybe probably whatever, first mainstream one. But like I can see like whatever youngsters now might have a harder time with it. Although I don't know, my younger cousins played the old Nintendo. But anyway, whatever. I totally get what you're saying. I think for Ultima, around I know you're not a huge fan of the series. Around five is when I
Hmm.
really liked it. I really liked 5 and 6. I feel like seven onward were just too. I mean, you know me. I like gamey games. I don't like guide me through a story type stuff as
Hmm.
much. And 7, 8 started to go there more so. I found whereas like 5 and 6 were just really crunchy games. They're kind of like what you're talking about with like what you like about King's Quest. It's just felt really open and you could do tons and tons of things. And the games weren't like say Ultimate 1, 2, 3, like the experience you had where it's just like this ancient game and you're moving
Yeah,
this
yeah,
character. Like like 5 and 6 felt very almost like kind of in between Nintendo and Super Nintendo
yeah,
era. Kind of, they remind me a little bit of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves on NES, like
yeah,
that kind of game, but like apply like a whole bunch of like almost like King's Quest type like typing interactivity to it.
yeah.
I don't know; those were a lot of fun for me, but I totally get what you're saying with the earlier ones.
Okay, well, we're coming up on time here for the
Coming up
episode,
on
I think.
time. Coming up on
Any
time.
any uh, any last games that you want to throw in there that were
Geez.
essential to your childhood?
Well, I have a huge list here. We didn't talk about Indiana Jones and the Fate of Atlantis. I really enjoyed that game, but to be honest, I mean, it was just another like icon click interface type game. Really well
Okay.
done though, but a lot of fun. There's a lot of one closing thought from me. I think
Yep.
computer games just feel more. I don't know. I don't even know if this is something I could back statistically, but it just felt more vast and like I don't know, like untracked. Like I feel like there's a lot of games I played in my youth that I just could never find again ever.
Mm.
I just search for the titles. I type like you go on Reddit or something and say I played this kind of game. Anyone have any idea? And everyone's like, eh. Whereas like Nintendo and Super Nintendo, I don't know, like they're more finite. Like if you remember a game and it was on this system, you can probably find out what it was. So there's just a lot of games I played that I can't remember the name of. There's one of my favorite games on the Atari ST was this really cool game where I guess you were North America. It had a map of North America, and there was an alien attack, and you like
Hmm.
would build bases around North America on your map, and then they'd attack, and you could build different like types of bases.
Yeah.
And after the attack ended, you would like heal up different areas, and it was just really cool because since it was North America, like including Canada, which is rare at the time, right? Or
Hmm.
I thought it seemed growing up in Canada, everything was U.S., U.S., U.S. So anytime
Yeah.
Canada showed up in anything, it was like wow, right? And so
Yeah.
like I could actually put a base in Toronto or in Nova Scotia or whatever, right? Or
Yeah. I
like
mean,
Mexico too.
that's still a recent phenomenon. Like I remember us having a conversation a few months ago when we discovered that Canada was part of Civilization Six.
Yeah. Do you ever see the movie? What is it? Outbreak, where there's an outbreak that kills everyone in the world or whatever. It's like a maybe more dangerous pandemic, I guess. I just
No, no,
the whole
I was considering seeing it, and then the pandemic happened, and then I was like, maybe not right now.
yeah. Fair. Well, I was just gonna say there's a scene. So like the whole movie takes place in the U.S. and there's no. I mean, basically the rest of the world dies. Or it's like out of the picture right away because it's just I don't know they just didn't want to include a more I guess international view to things. But I
Hmm.
remember at one point there's a map tracking like the spread of the virus
Hmm.
and it like I don't know, it was just kind of funny because it like spreads through the whole U.S. and then just stops at the U.S. border, and they're like, "This is end day. Like once this happens, that's how long that's our time limit for the movie, right?"
Yeah.
But it was like I forget if it originated in the U.S. or what, but like it went from the center to the borders. I don't know. It's just a really funny scene because like it's just very Americentric, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, the vast amount of games I played that I can't remember or even name is unfortunate. That's my closing thought.
Well, it's interesting because where you're saying games are kind of on track. Like I think that's like I was drawn largely to Sierra. Like
Hmm.
I played those, and the last game I wanted to mention was Gabriel Knight: Sins of the Fathers. Like
Okay.
I loved that game, and it had voice acting. Like it had Tim Curry, Mark Hamill, Michael Dorn, Leah
Oh
Remini.
wow.
Like it had like a budget that went into it, and it felt like such an alive world.
Hmm.
Um, but that's definitely a trend that I was noticing. Like I was much more willing to go with stuff that had been published by that company, and I kind of
Hmm.
trusted them the same way as I trusted stuff that had been published by Nintendo or Sega.
Hmm.
Versus like you went into Zellers, and
I read a news story with Zellers the other day and laughed about
if you went into Zellers or Kmart and you went to their entertainment section where they sold all the Nintendo games, they would also have like one of those spinning racks full of shareware games,
it. Hmm.
and I kind of just discarded anything like all these little indie things. Like that's what Ultima was originally. Like there was no publisher. It was a guy just started selling floppy disks out of some stores, right,
Hmm.
in a Ziploc bag. Um, and I just kind of tended to discard that. But you're right. That's totally the whole indie scene was happening there
Hmm. Yep.
on PC.
Yep. Totally. That's funny. I get it actually. It's kind of my attitude towards console stuff. Like some new console maker releases a new console, and immediately you're kind of like suspicious if it's.
Hmm.
I don't know. Like I felt very safe going with the Nintendo console, and then these companies that made these games that I was aware of. Whereas computer was more of like a wild flip to buy some random game by some people you've never heard of or whatever.
Yeah.
I kind of just I don't know. Shareware was cheap. It was like $1 a disc or something,
Yeah.
and I like inherited. I think I mentioned last time I inherited the Atari ST from my grandfather, so I kind of had this stuff flowing into my house regardless. So
Hmm.
I didn't really seek it necessarily, but I totally get the attitude.
Well, there we go. Some
There we go.
pre 2000s games to float the nostalgia boat.
Yep. Ba-da-ba-da.
All right. Well, we got to wrap this up. So I guess
Cool.
we'll see you next time.
Yep. Till next time.